and welcome back to the Retail Wrap-Up for 2024, Retail's favourite podcast. As always, you're joined by retail strategist and enthusiast Maddy Kulmar, that's me, as well as my fellow colleague and strategist here at RetailOasis, Emma Easton. RetailOasis would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognising the continued connection to lands, waters and communities. We pay our respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and to elders past, present and emerging. Today we're thrilled to welcome Briony Kennedy, the visionary force behind Adorn Cosmetics, to the podcast. Briony's transformative journey from modest beginnings to spearheading a sustainable beauty revolution is a story we can't wait to share with you. In an industry often criticised for its lack of sustainability and responsibility, Briony made a bold move by launching Adorn in 2010 with a focus on circular beauty refills and recycling initiatives. Her commitment to sustainability has remained steadfast, even in the face of industry norms. Briony's innovative approach has not only garnered attention, but has also set a new standard for eco-conscious beauty brands. Throughout our conversation, Briony shares the positive impact her brand is having on the planet and how the refillable process works for her customers, what it's like leading the way for other brands looking to make changes in the sustainable space, and how failures always offer valuable lessons to be learned. How she created and grew her loyal customer base and her insights on addressing Gen Z customers, her advice for entrepreneurs like herself and how important it is to back yourself. And finally, we explore her long-term goals, product launches and aspirations for the future. Please join us as we delve into Briony's journey, filled with resilience, innovation, and a commitment to making the world a more beautiful and sustainable place, one product at a time. We hope you enjoy this conversation. A very, very, very big welcome to Briony Kennedy. Welcome to season 4 of the Retail Wrap-Up podcast.
Thank you for having me. I feel like I've been waiting to be on this for forever now, and then the day's arrived. So I'm looking forward to having a chat with you and debunking some of the things that are going on.
I'd love if you could begin by telling us about your story. Like, where did you come from? What's your background? How did you end up here?
Yeah. So, look, I think to try and keep that really brief, because that's probably a whole nother podcast, but my background is varied, really heavily in the sales and marketing area. And predominantly in the car industry for quite some time, to be honest, but worked in quite a few different industries. Also had done a little bit of modelling, as you sometimes do when you're younger. So there have been some things that I've been in and some calendars and things like that. And on the side, I always worked as a makeup artist, because I still to this day have a beautiful packet of Derwents. I've got a drawing board and I still colour in to this day. I just find it very therapeutic. I love colour. I'm really drawn to it. So doing the makeup after hours was always something that I enjoyed thoroughly. It just gave me a chance to zone out from the day-to-day. So I, from that, then decided that I'd had enough of working for other people. I've always been really good with business and just coming up with concepts and ideas. And for me, I've always enjoyed helping other businesses with their journey or how they need to start with things. And so I thought, well, maybe, it's time for me to try something myself. And so this is going back pre-babies. So, I was 26 or 25 at the time, and I decided to jump from my car sales role to purchasing a beauty salon on Bridge Road in Melbourne, as you do. And so my whole goal was to just try and create something that was a bit more of a McDonald's approach to beauty back then, because I felt that, you really had quite a disparate, I suppose, service, or everything was very different depending on who you went to, even within the salon. And so I found the consistency of service not there. So I thought, if I can create that, surely we'll get some success out of it. So one of the things that I did was it created very sort of strict rules on how everyone had to do the services, so that if customers ever left, we wouldn't have any issues with customers leaving with them. And something that I did at the time, which no one had done, I'm not sure anyone has done yet, was I created a membership. So if you prepaid a certain amount each month, so a direct debit, say, for example, you got your legs waxed and it was $30. If you set up a direct debit for that $30 each month, you got all of the services for 20% less. So it meant that you would then be accumulating a little bit of credit, which a lot of women loved because it was saving towards either that facial or that massage, or it was almost like they were able to lay by another service at the same time as getting their regular ones cheaper. And so that was so successful that I knew what my revenue or my sales or cash flow was going to be every month. When I'd had enough being in that industry, I suppose, or having a salon per se, I was able to very easily sell it because I could quantify the value, which was quite difficult back then because, everything was still very cash based. You still had a lot of tills, wasn't as much FPOS, like it was, a bit of a mix. So for me, that made it a very easy business to sell. But just having that salon really taught me so much about women in general, apart from being one myself and having a lot of women around me. It really opened my eyes to different ages, different backgrounds, expectations around beauty. I think a lot of misinformation that people had been told, and they were living their lives at trying to achieve these false standards and expecting false things from their services and products. And, I thought this is really ridiculous. Any wonder everyone's spending so much money on beauty, because they're not only from magazines and things trying to achieve that perfection, whatever that is to that person, but they're also looking for realistic outcomes because they're being fed nonsense. And so that really didn't sit well with me. So during that, I used the salon experience as an opportunity to educate the women and the customers, so they became very loyal. But then from that and a few other, I guess, serendipity moments brought me to I suppose, the decision or the epiphany that I wanted to do something around creating makeup that people could have trust in and not feel that they were getting a little bit from this brand, a little bit from that brand. There was no sort of sense of trust or even loyalty to any particular brand. And, one that was ethical, one that was going to be as minimal waste as possible, because even way back then and even before that, I remember, I said this was going to take a few minutes, didn't I? And I'm waffling on. There we go. But here we go. So when I was about, primary school, so, decades ago, girls, I remember when recycling was put into place, and I don't know, it was like someone had given me ice cream when I learnt about it at school, and my mum still, laughs about the fact that she was constantly finding me in the bin, pulling everything out. And recycling everything. So that's always been something I've enjoyed. And so for me, I thought if I can marry, a beautiful product that is as guilt-free as possible and is truthful and trustworthy, and that is so honest that customers get to a point that when they purchase an Adorn or whatever it was at the time, you would just buy anything else without even feeling you have to look at the ingredients or look at anything, because you knew we stood for this one thing. And so that salon really gave me that opportunity to have a lot of these thought processes and see all of these issues and problems, and then sort of create a solution in a small, colourful way.
It sounds like it was a huge learning curve for you personally as well as businessly. But obviously you've told us, you're obviously obsessed with beauty. How did you get your foot in the door to retail, from going from, car sales, from the cosmetic studios?
Yeah. So basically, when I decided to sell the salon, I realised that it was probably not going to have that momentum that I wanted to achieve. I'd done all I needed to, I think, at that point. So when I sold it, I literally found out like a day or so later that I was pregnant. And so it was kind of like, that's good. This is all good. And I fell extremely ill. So I had something called hyperemesis, which is where you're in and out of hospital, quite unwell, constantly on drips. And, it was the worst, one of the worst, because I went back and had another child, so that's my fault. But one of the worst sort of 10 months of my life. And people talk to COVID and being stuck at home, and I think, well, I've been there, done that, and felt sick the whole time. So it's like the worst hangover. You can't stop vomiting, and it's 24/7 right up until they're born. So horrendous experience, but it was lucky that I'd sold the salon. And for me, wouldn't think much of anything at that point. But when I had my boys, so I had twins. And so when I had the twins, I reckon 5-6 months in, I started to get, I suppose, a bit fidgety, and I don't know how, because when you've got there's nothing to be fidgety about, but I did feel that the urge I needed to do something with the minute that I had left in my day. And so that's where I started, I suppose, running these ideas through my mind. But also critically at that point, it was really difficult because I think being stuck at home for so many months, so unwell, I ended up being diagnosed with depression not long after the boys were born. So, it was a very tumultuous, awful journey, sort of probably that first 3 to 4 months of having the boys. But at the same time, there was still that drive that I wanted to do something as well. So after I suppose I got myself to a state of mental wellness, I was able to sort of look at what these opportunities might be. And when I had the salon, someone dropped in and said, here's some information about our manufacturing company. If you ever want to produce your own products, let us know. We can do that for you. And I remember thinking, no, I was like, why? I wouldn't even know where to start, So, but I kept the card. I just remember thinking, interesting. And so when the boys were probably about 5 or 6 months, I remember that I had that card, and I started to have a little think about what it was that this particular manufacturing plant could do. And at the same time, I thought, look, maybe I'm just going to test out my theory around educating women in their homes around skincare and makeup. So I was at that point, Adorn was not even a thought process. It was, what can I do to just get out the house for a few minutes and do something I really love, and also, I suppose, help women in the areas that I know that they're needing it. So that education and how to put products on, etc. So I found a brand at the time that was I guess you'd call a party plan brand. And I started teaching people in their homes. And so I would go and they'd have 5 or 6 friends. And then because I suppose they loved it so much, and I was colour matching them with foundation, telling them how to do that, really making it very basic. And I just got very booked. I was constantly then doing all of these classes. And so I thought, well, I'm doing these classes and not charging anything for it, and I'm selling this product and getting this very small margin out of it. Maybe it's time to explore this concept of me just making my own products for these classes. And so that's kind of how that organic journey sort of occurred. I guess I was really, it was paving the footpath, so to speak, and really just being in there, figuring out what's working and experiencing it firsthand. And so that's where I guess I had that defining moment where, I'm making money for someone else. Let's create something that, I can benefit from. And I guess from there, it again was really just to service these classes. But then before long, and this is before really there was not really many websites, let alone beauty being sold 15 years ago on a retail store. It was still that whole, you have to go into a store and touch it and feel it. So it got to a point, I guess, where women were wanting to reorder, and I'm taking phone calls, and it was just getting a bit out of hand. So I thought, well, what if I put together a website more for a centralized place that they could just place the order and I could just print it off and not have to take the phone call. And so that's how we sort of started in that online space because of that, but also because I had no money to even fathom creating a brand that needed to go into a store, didn't understand anything about sort of investment or investors, so I bootstrapped with my husband the whole thing. And so for us, I think a lot of what we couldn't do was probably a blessing in disguise so many years later, because we were forced financially to really rethink how everybody else was doing something to be involved. And for us, that meant we had to sell these products online we had to go to, vegan events and events that people wouldn't even be normally seeing makeup. We just would be there, and we would be providing colour matching services. We'd actually be standing there helping you, showing you the difference. And, just really getting out there and talking to people. And that was, I suppose, the biggest turning point for us, was getting it out there, and then, of course, driving people to the to the website, because you didn't have, the SEO, you didn't have social media or any of that kind of thing. So if you had the website, you still really had to use traditional advertising to get people there. But that's kind of the organic journey in a small way, how we got onto the online space and started selling the Adorn brand.
Yeah, I was going to say, it does sound definitely like an organic journey. You know what, no journey is easy. There's always some bumps in the road. And would you say you've had any kind of big failures along the way, and how would you say you've learned from them?
Oh, again, I think that's another podcast. I think one of the biggest things that shocks most people, and maybe not someone who's bootstrapped their own business before, but I didn't take a wage from the Adorn brand for nearly 10 years. So definitely there was a whole lot of faith and hope driving me along the whole way, because it was constantly reinvesting in the brand. And I guess in hindsight too, we probably started with too many SKUs, and so it was that constant reinvestment into the amount of SKUs we had. But it was also very purposeful, and it was also intentional that we did start with so many SKUs, because for me, the Adorn brand had to stand out, and the way it needed to stand out was not just what it stood for, but the range. Because back then, there was only probably a couple of brands that were even in this space, and most of them were just, say, a bronzer or a foundation. That they didn't have a range. So it was really about, okay, how can we get people to come to us for everything? So it makes it really simple, and of course be competitive, but also have all of these amazing ethics. But also it was very much an education piece, Adorn, because as you said, 15 years ago, people didn't really care like they do now. Cruelty-free might have been, something, and veganism was kind of starting around that time. But, most of these other principles that the Adorn brand had, people didn't understand. And so definitely a lot of moments of sucking my thumb along the way. And I think it was probably underestimating the amount of money that was going to be required to start a business. And I think most people probably would say that, especially a beauty brand. It is a space that you are competing with billion-dollar, not even but billion-dollar brands. So it's not an easy one. So to carve your sort of niche is also a little difficult, but for us it wasn't, because there wasn't really too many people doing what we were doing back then. I think the hardest thing for us was definitely the fact that for a good 9 years we were really educating everybody, and the few that did understand what we were trying to achieve fell in love with the brand, and we got very loyal customers because of it. But it was that whole education constantly around why we do the things that we do.
And I suppose through that time you were learning as well, as a business owner, doing things for the first time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I think also, understanding and not being so, and to this day, I still mentor people occasionally. And one of the things that I will always say to them is, always be across your cash flow. That's more important than yes, you need to be profitable. But I think a lot of people confuse that, especially in small business. They don't understand the difference between profit and cash flow. They think they're the same. And very easily get caught out. So every day look at your cash flow so you know what's coming in, what's going out, because that's going to tell the truest story as to how long you're able to survive for. And don't overspend just to get your goods cheaper. So a lot of people are hell-bent on margins, and understand that when you're scaling and you're at a position to do that. But I think initially don't be tempted that, 1,000 or 1,000,000 units, you're going to get a cent off, because at the end of the day, you still got to outlay that cash. and then it's sitting there just possibly doing nothing. And I think that's probably not so much a margin choice, but I think that's what a lot of brands are probably suffering with at the moment, is that, you know, during the uptake of COVID, they're now stuck with a hell of a lot of stock that now isn't probably doing too much. And so therefore your cash is just sitting there, and of course your profitability will follow.
I was reading on your website that you've now refilled over 172,444 plastic pots and bottles, which is a huge accomplishment. But I imagine that sitting in this space of refillables would have been a really difficult journey to have embarked on, particularly back in 2008 when this sort of thing wasn't spoken about or wasn't utilized by brands. Can you tell us about your journey towards this, creating this circular beauty refill and recycling initiative?
Yeah, sure. So again, for me, as I mentioned, you know, recycling and minimalism, like, although if you came to my house, I'm a maximalist because I love colour and I've got gold animals everywhere, but everything has to serve a purpose. And so what I mean by minimalism is I don't like things that don't serve any purpose, like they're single use. So I've always hated that. But my philosophy for Adorn has always been, do we actually even need to produce it from the beginning? Is it necessary? Because one, not only from a business point of view, if you don't care so much about the environment, but it makes sense because it's saving money. But do we need things like outside packaging? So, you know, if you buy a lip gloss, do you really need the box and then the plastic seal? No, you don't. Maybe if you're in store, possibly. We're not, so that's not a concern for us. So, you know, we're not going to make boxes. You don't get plastic seals, so we don't have to make those things. So rather than being focused, which is, I think people are understanding more so now, is that don't be so focused on, oh, okay, good, this material's biodegradable, this material's recyclable. You know, yeah, that's all great. But the point of that is that there was still resources required to make that in the first point. So I'm all about not making it at all. Like, don't touch the Earth's resources if you don't have to. I'm not going to make something just because it looks pretty. And yes, it's probably held the Adorn brand back in those early days where I did have opportunities to go into, you know, some stores that I won't mention, but we made that decision not to, because I knew I would have had to have overhauled everything we did, put packaging on everything, and it was not something that I was prepared to do. And I also knew that even selling the refills would have been very difficult in the way they were set up. So that's definitely been something that was financially, I suppose, limiting. But now, of course, you know, it's a positive. But moving on from that, it's okay, let's provide a product short of not wearing makeup at all. That's your best alternative. Don't wear anything. That's the best thing for the environment. Don't wear clothes. Don't makeup on. You know, like, but let's be realistic. What's the next best thing from doing nothing? And that's really how I make all of my decisions about the brand. So I will look at the product and say, okay, we don't need the packaging. What's the best way to get the ingredients? Of course, let's make sure we're getting them ethically. We don't use, obviously, animal ingredients, not tested on animals. We source from Australia, with the exception of some of our packaging. Unfortunately, there's just not an industry that's great enough here for that, unfortunately. But for me, having everything made here and sourced where possible from here, you're saving from you know, your petrols, your fuels, your packaging, and all of that stuff. There's a saving there for the environment and of course for the business, but also giving customers really pure ingredients that are multi-purpose. So again, for me, it's about, okay, well, if this person buys a blush, can they use it for something else? Because at the end of that life cycle of the blush, is it going to be fully finished? And it kind of breaks my heart that we've all got makeup that hasn't been finished. And again, that to me is not about, yes, it's a waste of maybe our money, but to me, it's actually more heartbreaking because it's a waste of something that got taken from the earth. And I know that might sound a little bit crazy, but it just does. It just upsets me. I hate wasting things. And I think if we can make something that's multi-purpose, I feel better about it as the founder, that I've not taken anything more or less than I needed, and I've given customers a chance to totally utilize that product and appreciate the earth giving it to them to use that. So that's that. When I introduced the refills, I was probably laughed at. I think that was probably, as much as everybody thought the other thing was, oh, great, like multi-purpose, good on you that you love the fact it's getting used, but I don't care about that. I'm just getting a multi-use product. And that's great. You don't have packaging. But I think the refills were the ones that most people couldn't get their head around. And quite a lot of people that I had met with that had been in business a lot longer than me in the industry were like, that is not going to work. People will want, a new pot. They'll want, it's not hygienic. It's all this. And I thought, no, I'm just going to go off my gut. And to be honest, I've never had a business plan. Even now, I still don't. Everything I do is based off my gut and my gut instinct. And I just think that if I'm thinking it, hopefully there's some others that do. And thankfully that's the case. But I just persisted with that. And I thought to myself, well, the minerals are inorganic. They don't go off. So all we have to do is make sure we produce a beautiful pot that will last. Like if we're going to make something, make sure it lasts. It's not going to break. So that then all we need to do is produce a little sachet that, of course, is not only better environmentally to send because we can pop it in an envelope and not any protective wrapping, but it's also taking up less landfill, less to recycle because you're continuing using that pot. So we had such success out of that. I dipped my toe in the water with the minerals because I thought it was the safest way to see how people were going to do it. If they were going to, I don't know, mix it with silly things and send it back and, I don't know, get an infection. I don't know how. Like I just was like, I'm not sure. Like this could go totally pear-shaped, but hopefully it doesn't. And it didn't. And it became so popular that we then very slowly over the journey beyond that, which I think was about 2 years in that I introduced the refills, we started to slowly introduce other products. We started out as a makeup only brand. We only had one skincare product, which is our 2-in-1 skin primer moisturizer, which today is still our best selling product. It's just so beautiful. I'm biased, but it is. And so I guess it doesn't last 15 years if it's crappy, does it? But we started to introduce skincare because I guess we make our products so well that customers get to benefit from something that's so amazing and so pigmented that they need such a small amount. It lasts forever. But then as a business, I realised, we're not getting the turnover we need. The products are lasting too long. And I guess that's what some brands may or may not want. But for me, I'm not about to stop the quality, but we need to look at what can we introduce so that we can actually stay in business and someone's not keeping a blush for 10 years. So we introduced skincare at that point. And then once we had success from that, we started the refill program around the skincare as well as some of the liquid and the cream-based makeup products as well. So we sell equally as many refills as we do full-size products to this day, and that's something I'm super proud of. And if it can't be refilled, like a gloss or something like that, then we actually have a program where customers can send that packaging back to us. And at an expense to us, we then send that to a company called TerraCycle. We purchase their boxes that they have and we basically put them into that. And then when they're full, we send them off and they turn them into things like outdoor pots and furniture, which is amazing. So very much providing that end-to-end cycle. Again, don't produce it if you don't need it. If we are, make sure it lasts. And then, of course, give it the option to be reused.
I think that's really beautiful that you really thought so much further than just the refillable part. Like you've even thought about what happens to stuff that then can't be refilled or can't be reused, and you're really taking responsibility for your entire product range. I think that's something to be commended. And
thank you.
Yeah, and clearly your customer is on board with it, right? Like they must be shopping using what's important to them as their motivator for choosing you. I guess my next question is, based on all of this information, like what are you doing to kind of attract that next or that future customer? Because you know who your customer is right now. but you know that eventually it's going to shift, right? And you're probably looking to attract those younger customers. How does that work for you, or what does that look like?
That's an interesting question, because when I started again, makeup was always advertised to or with very young looking girls. Even like you just didn't see anyone above, my vintage. It just didn't happen, So I never had the money to advertise. Again, it was, again, going to events and doing things like that. So I also recognised very early on that it was the women sort of over 30 and even over 40 that probably weren't given any attention, and were the ones that it made sense to me. Not only did I start to fall in that age bracket, but it made sense to me that they had more money than the younger ones. They were the ones that were ignored and not given the attention. So they were probably wanting to be guided, and I knew that from the classes. And so I thought, well, this makes sense not only from a business perspective, but it feels good because I'm also helping women in this area. But then my other thought process was, what is it when you're a younger girl or boy, what are the first products you ever use? Your mums.
Yeah.
Really. So I'm like, I need to get to all the mums. So if I get to all the mums, they're all going to have their Adorn stolen by the younger ones. So, and that's exactly what happened. So a lot of the customers, I suppose, or loyal Adorners, as we refer them, that have come through, that are sort of under that age of 30, have come through because of that. They've utilised their mum's products, and there's often funny stories in our private group about what they've found in their kids' drawers, etc. So I guess what we are looking at now, though, is what can we offer maybe the younger demographics straight up, because we're not at a price point that is, I suppose, reasonable for someone to start out, and also a lot of our products are quite active. So we are looking at, I suppose, a more baseline product for, say, teens to, say, the 20s, where they don't need anything particularly active, but they do want good skincare. And also it gives then our Adorners the opportunity to involve their kids with the brand, but not at a price point that they're spending, but also something that they know is backed with honesty, integrity, and results.
I think that's a really interesting direction to come at these customers from. And you are incredibly right. Like, the first time I ever tried makeup would 100% have been something I had quickly stolen or had a try of, and from my mum's makeup.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting. And there is definitely like a level of trust, right? Like, you've created it already with your Adorners, and therefore their kids already trust their mum. So of course they're gonna then have some sort of loyalty. Like, I think about when I used to go through my mum's stuff, and she had like the Beauty Flash Balm by Clarins or something. And at the time I thought, mum uses it, it must be amazing. We obviously
or the three-step Clinique, the three-step Clinique. Like that. I don't know if they still do that, but that just went off its brain, because people were like, oh, now I know what to do. 1, 2, 3. It's easy, and it's just people didn't understand. And I can still sort of, like, often, if I get to the shops, it's a nostalgia thing. Like, Nivea does this cleansing milk, and I still just have to have a little sneaky sniff, because it just reminds me of my mum.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's just the nostalgia attached to it. It's like, I'm not going to use it. Yeah, it's so funny.
And completely kind of change the topic here, but we just wanted to ask, what's the best piece of advice you've been given, throughout your whole journey?
Oh, I'm not sure that I can pinpoint that to one thing. I think I would say my advice would be to get the best advice would be to make sure you surround yourself by people that are doing better than you in the areas that you want to be successful, whether that's within the business or how you want the business to end up. I think it's very much for me, I've always tried to surround myself with other people and not have an ego. So, okay, I don't get this. I need to find someone that does, and I need to listen to them, zip it and just listen. And, I don't have to take it on board, but I think that's one piece of advice. And from that, I've had so many amazing nuggets of, whether whether it's industry or manufacturing knowledge, whether it's, producing the products, whether it's from actual customers, things they hate about certain things. But I think if I was to give anyone advice, I think my biggest one would be listen to your gut, because it is actually telling you something. And if you just get rid of all the noise, it's often going to give you the answer to what you need, rather than worrying about what you look like, what your brand looks like, how rich you are, how much stock you're turning over, what your ROI is. Like, just get rid of all that noise, just listen to your gut, and I think you'll find that you'll always make the right decisions, because, again, that's purely how Adorn's been built, on my gut.
And it's obviously worked. Yeah.
Thank God.
I mean, based on the advice that you gave initially about surrounding yourselves with people who are in that space, who are doing better than you, can you tell us, and perhaps it's not within your realm of cosmetics or beauty, but what is your favourite retail brand and why? That could be domestic or international.
Oh, I've got different reasons for liking different things. I think the experience online, I quite like in Essence, because I find their website really seamless to use. And yes, I do expect some essence to be sent to me, people, for that plug. So I just find it really easy to use. Like, it will tell you without asking, how many points you've accumulated. Do you want to use? Like, I feel like I don't have to do anything but open up their website. So from that point of view, I love that.
And we have to ask, is there anything new coming for Adorn Cosmetics?
There is, actually, and you're the first to hear about it. So that's super exciting. And I think when we go live, we'll have launched it too at that point. So speaking of the refills, we have, I put together, it's the first Australian-made refillable build-your-own mascara, which I wish I had one to show you. But essentially, it is, I think we can agree the biggest bane with mascaras is the wand. It's all about that bloody wand. Like, it's either not big enough, too curvy, or it doesn't, like, whatever it is. Everyone's got their unique little way of putting it on. And so the other issue with the wands is they're not recyclable or anything. And so, yes, you can wash them and give them to the RSPCA and things like that to help with animals with their hair and stuff. But there's gazillions of these things that are entering landfill every year, and it pains me. So I thought, okay, there's a pain point for women with a mascara formula. They have to just be stuck with whatever the wand is, and then they've got to throw it out. The only bit that they can recycle is the bottom bit. So I thought, let's marry the two together. So you can but as of March, you'll be able to build your own custom mascara. So it's a waterproof mascara that doesn't rip your eyelashes off to get off. That's another drives me nuts. So it's waterproof, and you basically purchase the base of the mascara. It's got a little cap on it. And then you pick out of 3 wands, and each of them do a different thing. So whether you've got little lashes, or you want longer lashes, or you want them to be more open, all of the wands do different things. So you select the wand that you want, take the cap off, put it in. And then, of course, when you get to the end of that mascara, all you need to do is take the wand out. It's made out of silicone, so it lasts forever. You wash it with hot soapy water, and then you just purchase the base from us again, and you pop it in, and you can send that old base back to us to be recycled. So I'm so excited about that, because, turfing wands has always been something that's really upset me, and I know our customers are just chomping at the bit to get hold of it. So, can't wait for that release.
I feel like that's going to be one that's going to be going straight in my basket.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
You're right. So I think we use different kind of mascaras for different events.
It's not the formula. It's often just the wand that makes the difference. It's very much like, I'll have people say to me, I just don't like a particular foundation. And I'm not one to put down any brands. I'll always say, have you tried a different brush? Because using the analogy, I suppose, of a painter, I mean, you could be the best, but, you know, if you're going to buy your brushes from the $2 shop and the bristles are really hard, you're just not going to get the same result. So it's always about the applicating tool and the product together that make, you know, that flawless or that better sort of application.
Amazing.
So
Wow.
there's a little tip for everyone. Make sure you've got good tools. And I know a brand that actually has very good vegan, very soft tools for you.
So, Briony, we're on to our last question. And this is one.
Oh, that's gone so quick. Yeah,
I know.
it's been like for ages.
But this is a question that we're asking everybody on the podcast this season. So it's hard. But in one question, could you describe your last 12 months and what you're manifesting for the next 12?
Not going to lie, hellish. And so I'm manifesting heaven because I think, like so many brands, whilst, you know, we're all doing amazing things and, you know, we're all in a very hard place as well. And I think that there's a combination and a flow-on effect for everybody. And I think that, you know, yes, there was that whole dreaded word of COVID where everybody was sort of normalising and very quickly being a small batch brand, because we don't like overproducing, we didn't get stuck with that too much stock issue, because that's part of our philosophy, not to have too much stock. But of course, you just get to that point where customers are trying to really hang on to their products a lot longer. They're trying to stretch what they're using, maybe for the temporary period of time. They're trying a cheaper brand. And I can tell through our private Facebook group, which is the Adorners exclusive group on Facebook, that they come back and say, oh, I went off and tried a $20 moisturiser because I could, and my skin's now wrecked, but I'm back. So there's definitely been an element of that happening since we've had all these issues with the interest rates. And I think that's just a killer for a lot of businesses on different levels. But it's also an opportunity to streamline processes, look at things a bit more clearly, and, you know, for us, use this time to, you know, focus our attention on that rebrand, that new website, and, you know, different ways of providing that loyalty for customers moving forward.
That's all we've got time for today. Thank you for sticking around for this episode of the Retail Wrap-Up podcast. If you'd like to support our podcast, you know where to find us on Instagram at RetailOasis or on LinkedIn. Plus, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from to receive notification when we drop a new episode. We'd love to hear from you, our loyal listeners, by way of a review, or you can drop us a guest suggestion via one of our social media channels. Once again, we appreciate your company and we're excited to delve into more insights on retail in our next episode. Bye for now.